Yes, I'm still here, Hollywood. And coming up on today's episode...
I get addicted to housewives. I mean, Beverly Hills Housewives. I get addicted because they get to be, many of them are friends, and many of them are people I've known or been acquainted with over the years. Several are. But you just get like, you're like, I wonder what's happening over there today. Like, you really do. They bring home a bag of money every night. I'm like, give me that, because I don't know how much I think you have to pay cash to leave this hotel, and I don't know what they're I don't know what anything costs. It doesn't say anything anywhere. I got hacked at my own. I did it. Somebody called me and asked me for a code, and I gave it to them. Apple, no one will ever call you and ask you for any of this information. Do not give anybody information on the phone.
Strong, independent women in TV comedies have always been a hallmark of the genre. Dishing out laughs while solving problems with wisecracks is comedy gold. For 11 seasons, starting in 1993, there was one woman on NBC who perfectly sliced and diced the punchlines with her sharp-tongued delivery. This is Still Here Hollywood. I'm Steve Kmetko. Join me in today's guest from Frasier, Peri Gilpin. Hi, Peri.
Hi, Steve.
It's so nice to see you.
Thank you.
How are you doing today?
I'm good.
I just caught this morning on Roku, thanks to Roku, the most recent episode of the Frasier reboot. You weren't in it enough, was my impression.
Nice.
I wish you were in it longer, although you had the best first line.
I think
you looked like crap.
Yeah, right.
Do you miss playing Roz all the time?
I do. Yeah. It was a great character, and I loved her. I loved how, how adventurous she was in the beginning. And then it was such a huge change when she had a baby.
Alice.
Alice. And so I really missed the, I don't want to say the word freedom only because, but the freedom of just doing whatever you want to do pre-kids. And I always knew that. But once I even my sister-in-laws were all having babies while I was fake pregnant. And I would talk about my pregnancy, and I would have to be reminded that I wasn't really pregnant. Because my character there were some things that I experienced before I ever had children that gave me pause, gave me stuff to think about. Not pause, I wanted kids. But life really does change.
How close were you to Roz in terms of who you are and who she was?
Pretty close, I think, in a lot of ways. I had my wild years earlier. Once I moved to LA, I was kind of like most people here, kind of in a bedroom community, kind of early to bed, early to rise, healthy eating, and if anyone hears that, they'll laugh their ass off. But I was not like her at the time. I had been more adventuresome in my personal life. And so but I didn't know anyone that wrote on the show at that time. So I don't know where they got their information, if it was based on me. But I think really what she was based on was, I think she was what everyone she was a creation of that fabulous writer's room, and particularly the women in the writer's room, I think.
She was saucy.
Yeah, and good at what she did, really good. And she really was self-reliant, and she, felt confident about her work and about who she was, which I just loved playing because that's the opposite of me.
And she knew how to keep Frasier in line.
Yeah, and that was part of the job, was to, she was saddled with, was this guy that didn't know what he was doing, but it was actually really good once he got going. We just had to get him, just the technical part of it. And I think that was, I love where we came into the story in the pilot, which was, a few weeks in. So they were used to each other's idiosyncrasies at that time, but she was still dealing with his greenness.
Do you ever watch old episodes?
I hadn't for a long time, but when watching these, they'll kind of roll right into them. Mm-hmm. My husband and I and kids have watched a couple, and they're they just are amazingly good.
I think, and I know I'm on the crowded side of the room in this regard, I think it's one of the best sitcoms ever in the history of television. It's right up there. The writing, the acting, the casting was perfect.
Yeah.
Was it easy to get right back into it when you did this most recent reboot?
I was worried. I was really scared. Like, how am I going to do this? But I walked on the set, and it was a different sound stage, but it was on the same, at Paramount. And, I just sort of walked in, and Kelsey was in the middle of it all. He directed it. He directed that episode, and I always loved working with him as a director. He's a great director. And it just, I don't know. And the cast was so friendly, and there were several people I'd worked with for all those years and kept in touch with. So there were a lot of people around to just enjoy it and lap it up and, really just make the most of it. So I was scared, but once we started, and he did a great thing when the door opened and he responded so hugely, it kind of gave the audience permission to do that too, or I don't know, cued them to do it, I want to say. But it was very sweet, and I felt very thrilled to be there, and it was thrilling to hear them respond that way, and it was thrilling just to be on the stage with Kelsey again.
There's one episode in particular that I watch whenever I'm in a bad mood, or whenever I want to see something that makes me feel comfortable. There's the episode Ham Radio, which I thought was so hysterical, where you do this radio play, a mystery, that is just so very funny, and the timing and everything is so great. And you had dental work. Roz had dental work, and she's trying to do her part. And that one line that always cracks me up is, "I can't believe one of my guests could be a multiple murderer." It's so funny.
And who wrote that was David Lloyd, who wrote, Chuckles the Clown. He was on Mary Tyler Moore, and he had written for Dick Cavett and Johnny Carson, and he was our consulting producer, and his son, Chris Lloyd, ran the show. And of course, we had just the most amazing creators of the show were David Lee, Peter Casey, and David Angel. And besides that fabulous bunch of writers, there was a whole writer's room, and we just had the most. We just had the most amazing writers. That's just all there is to it.
Yeah, it was a classic landmark series.
But what I was going to say is David Lloyd phonetically wrote out mubbabas. Like, so yeah, he knew, he didn't just leave it up to me, which he was always so kind. He would have been fine if I wanted to do it myself, but I was like, oh my God, you went to all this trouble. This is perfect. I know just what to do. Then also you're not just trying to do it over and over again and do, you can actually do it the same because you've phonetically done it, but it was so great in the script. And another time they did that to John. They put he was supposed to be talking about a town in Korea when he was in the Korean War, I guess. And so they put it in the script, and he went and did his homework, and so he pronounced it perfectly at the table read, and they all went, whoa, and he got an ovation, and then not a standing, he got a clap. They clapped for him, but then after that, for the rest of the week, that name got longer and longer, and John. John kept, and it was just very funny because they, the writers and the actors on that show just really had a great time together.
Does it seem like it was that long ago that you actually began work on Frasier? It's 30 years or so, isn't it?
Yeah.
Does it seem that long?
Yeah.
Oh, it does. Time doesn't fly when you're having fun.
Well, no, I think about it all the time, and those are marked pretty clearly in social media. It's been 22 days and 22 years since Frasier. You see it all the time. I wouldn't have thought about it if it weren't for social media, but they do kind of mark that, and so you think about it. It makes you think about it, and I think that's good. I think it's good to remember how long it's been.
Why?
Well, because I think LA at that time sort of sneaks up on you a little bit. There's no season. There are seasons, but there's no really marked seasons, and you can. I think we are all, because we're all. You do the same thing your whole life. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
so it's sort of, oh, you're like, I'm doing what I did at 20 now, and is that what I had planned? Is that what I wanted to do? And it is.
Is it?
But yeah. But it's also like, wow, I've been doing this a long time. And a lot of times you'll have the exact same discussions with your colleagues, about this or that. And it's funny because it all comes down to the roll of the dice.
Yeah, it does in this town, doesn't it?
It does.
Are you glad you came here? Are you glad you do what you do?
Yeah, I am. I am very glad. I have no regrets. I I grew up in a family of actors. I was on SAG Insurance as a child. My mom, but local actors in Dallas, people that did commercials and things like that. And so everyone's always lived kind of audition to audition or job to job. And, you're freelance, so you are prepared for the downtime and you try to stay prepared for the downtime. And I think sometimes you don't, I always say, if you want to get a great job that you can't turn down or that you can't even argue with, buy a refundable ticket somewhere you're dying to go. It's just always like you're always tied to this place. And I wish I would have had a few more adventures, but I will. And I think also the pandemic is making me feel that way. And that time we all spent indoors, I just really I enjoyed it at the time, but now I really want it back. But it's tough.
What was the best decision you ever made regarding your career?
Auditioning. Well, I think the best decision I ever made was I produced a play. A friend of mine came to me here in LA who was dating a guy. I don't know what happened to her. The last time I ran into her at a coffee shop. So at that time she was working on Survivor. She was on the production team for Survivors. I don't know what's happened since. But she was dating somebody here, and she lived in Chicago, and I think she had a whole other life in Chicago. But she was dating somebody here, and she wanted to, she met me through him, and she said, I'm going to give you $65,000 to produce a play. And all I ask is that you put him in it. So I was like, are you sure you want to do that? And she said, I am. And so I partnered up with a guy that's still a great friend who'd gone to Yale Drama School. And I spent a lot of time at Williamstown Theater Festival and knew them. And I spent a lot of time in New York. I lived in New York, and I knew this kind of group of people. And so he and I started looking for a play. And we'd find a play, we'd invite all of our friends over to, we'd rent out like a dance studio or something, invite everybody over to listen to the play. And about 4 times people would go, no, do not spend that money on this. This isn't worth it. And finally we found this great play written by Richard Greenberg while he was at Yale. And it's about a lot of Yaleys. And Neil knew him, and it was his first play, and it was called The Moderati. And we loved this play. It was hilarious. And we got Ron Link, who was a fabulous comedic director, to direct us. And we did it at the Tiffany Theater. And I had always kind of had a little bit of a snobbery because I came from theater, and I went to school, and studied a lot of theater before I got here. And I was like, everyone on stage in this town looks like they're auditioning for a TV show. Like, why don't you just, but then also, they wouldn't have good props, like walls would go like this. I remember somebody like trying to answer a payphone, and the whole phone came down. And I'm like, oh my God, because everyone's just trying to get to TV or film, right? So, but I'm like, but use your stagecraft. It would bother me. So I wanted to do this play, and we did this play, and Jeff Greenberg came to see it, and he said, waited for me, and he goes, I want you to come. I want you to come audition for this pilot that I'm working on. And I did, and I got it. And it was for Jimmy Burrows. I auditioned for Jimmy Burrows. It was called Flesh and Blood. And I was just first of all, he saw me there and based that decision based on my work, which I was so thrilled about. So I auditioned for television in my theater thing. But also I was so warm. I was not rusty. I was like ready to go. I was a well-oiled machine, and anything that was asked of me in the audition, I felt like I could do, and I felt like I could do it well, and I just felt so good, and I got it, and I wound up doing that, and I wound up doing another show for Jimmy, and then I wound up doing Frasier, and I think that producing that play was probably the best decision I ever made.
Oh.
Thanks for asking.
You're welcome.
Never
Thanks
thought
for
about
answering.
that before. It was a long answer. Sorry.
No, that's okay. This is a long show. Was your career, since you came from a family of actors and auditioners, and was it predestined that you would become an actor?
Probably, but I didn't look at it that way. My mom was a school teacher when I was born, and I was born while she was actually at Baylor in college studying to be a teacher. And they married very young. She married a guy that was trying to be a pastor, and I was born 9 months to the day. And it was like, I was really born 9 months to the day. I mean, there was nothing. So they were very, very sheltered, and she was, in her finals. I was born May 27th. She was in her finals of her sophomore year. And so I grew up with my mom, and I wanted to be a school teacher. All the years she wanted to be a school teacher. And then after about 6 or 7 years of being a school teacher, she would team teach with this other young teacher, and they had both taught special ed classes in their student teaching days. And once that's on your resume, you can't not do that anymore. And she just burned out. They team taught 60 kids. They had 30 apiece that they combined. And that's just, no one can do that for very long. And so then she went to her first love, which is why she went to Baylor to begin with, was to study with Paul Baker. And she remarried my stepdad, and he said, be an actress if that's what you want to do. So I saw her in a play. I saw her in Picnic. She was playing Midge. She was on the stage, and the lights lowered on her as she was dreamily looking up, thinking about, I can't think of the name of the character, but she was, her sister, the guy was in love with her sister. And so she was feeling, it'll never happen for me, and she was a little sad, and the lights dimmed, and my sister went, Mama! And my mom, I just saw as the lights went out, my mom went, and I was like, that looks like fun. That is fun. That's what I want to do now. So I did it.
It's so funny that you should mention being born 9 months to the day. My father was a Baptist minister, and my mother was more strict than he was in terms of religion. And I remember when my sister got married, she had my first niece, their first granddaughter, 9 months to the day after they got married. And it was like she made certain everybody knew.
Yeah.
Sounds like you had kind of the same background.
Totally. My dad was wanting to be a Baptist preacher. He was at Baylor. He played football at Baylor, and he was second string. And I think the coach put in a third string guy, and he got upset and he left school, left seminary. He wasn't really in seminary. He was in school. He hadn't gone to seminary yet, and became a DJ.
Left the ministry behind.
Yeah. And he went all over the country as a DJ. And in fact, one of our writers on Frasier, Ken Levine, finally put it together. He goes, I interviewed your dad when I was in college. He ran the station here in LA. And so he always sends me air checks. So he wound up in Philadelphia, and then he was a weatherman in Philadelphia. He was like the first Action News, Channel 6 in Philly, the weatherman. And he'd make it really funny, because he wasn't a meteorologist. And he was like, why are you making me the meteorologist? I don't know how to, haven't studied this. So he made it funny, and everyone loved it. And I hear he died in a parachuting accident in 1983, but I hear stories about him once a month. Somebody, tells me something hilarious that they thought was hilarious that he did on air. But my favorite one is that they were interviewing some woman in a towel. Like, it was the local, WPVI. They're interviewing a woman in a towel. And when they came, and for some reason she was in a towel, when they came back to the weather, he was standing there in a towel. just to make it funny. And I think that's so funny. But anyway, so he was a young guy. He was parachuting, and he left us. But they were both raised in churches in Dallas, in Houston, actually, in very, very, they were very religious. That's why they were at Baylor. But honestly, for both of them, and I'm telling something a little bit out of school, but I think it's okay. They both were they were children of alcoholic fathers. And they're both both of their dads were married to women that didn't know. No one knew it was a disease. No one knew that it was something that they could do something about.
Get treatment for. And one of my grandfathers had come from just basically back from World War II like that, and the other one that wasn't the situation. But they were both severe alcoholics, and their children were terrified, and they found church, and they got really, 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 really involved in church, and it was all about church. So they really followed those rules. And in Texas, it's no drinking and, no gambling, no movies. A lot of people were upset with my mom later when we all started doing movies and stuff. And as time went on, my mom went to my pastor's house one day, and he poured her a glass of wine, and she was like, "Bruce, She enjoyed it, but that was a big deal. But he's like, it's not. That's okay. You can have a glass of wine, but it was a big deal. It was in my family. My father was a Baptist minister. His brother was a Baptist minister.
Wow!
But his brother was in Phoenix. He ended up in Phoenix, and my father was in Cleveland. And in Cleveland, you're much. I don't know. At the time, you stuck closer to the rules. I remember in our household growing up, no drinking, no dancing, no smoking, no playing cards.
No cards.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And his brother, on the other hand, would enjoy a glass of wine now and again, and my mother's eyebrow would go up, and she'd develop a tic. But it's funny how those good behaviors, I don't know how else to describe it, but it's a different kind of an upbringing.
It really is. I mean, it really. I was raised to think that, drinking was such a taboo, and then, that's like a Romeo to Juliet. I mean, that's like make it even more interesting. Why don't you?
Right. Yeah. Well, I've been through rehab, so I'm in AA.
Congratulations.
Thank you very much. I celebrated 8 years recently.
You did?
Yeah. I had gone 10 years and then moved back to Chicago and was triggered, but I'm back and feeling really good.
Well, one of the most amazing experiences I ever had was at my sister was in rehab at Sierra Tucson, and I'm sure I'm not supposed to, but my sister has passed away. But we were at Family Week, and she had a son who was about 6 years old, and we were doing the circle, and there was we'd been divided up into groups, and there was maybe a 65-year-old man in this group with us, and I really wasn't sure why he was completely alone. There was a lot of us, but in our family there, and he was part of our group, and was a very sweet guy. So he did the circle, and he didn't have anyone there. He had no family to do the circle with, so they said, you can just do it to sit in the chair and we'll guide you through it, and you can talk to whoever you wish was here or want to be here. So he did this thing with his mom, and it was all about, it was kind of about an incident that had happened that had really, really scarred him. And he needed to talk with her about it and kind of forgive her. It was incredibly powerful. It was the most dramatic thing I've ever seen on film, in a stage, anything. It was really powerful and beautiful, him talking to his mom. And I realized that's why we're all in the same group, because my sister needs to hear her little boy, needs to hear what her little boy might be feeling when he gets to be 65. It's sort of like the cycle of life. And it was really, really powerful, and it was helpful to all of us.
I was in a place in Tucson also.
Oh, really?
Yeah. It was a really good experience to be removed from your normal setting. And we had the same kind of family situations, role playing, and none of my family could be there either. But they had other people in the program who would sit and role play to help you out. And my sister, who was also in AA, came down to visit me there, finally. But she was going through cancer. She had cancer at the time, and it was the first time I'd seen her in ages. And she came down, and she'd been getting chemotherapy, and she was bald. To see her like that, and she was my big sister, and she's since passed away. But it's funny things that life throws your way.
That's a memory. You know, I was going to share a memory with you that you brought up earlier. That ham radio, that episode. My mother had cancer for 15 years, and she'd been living with me for about 6 months, and she passed away that week. And Kelsey called me. David Lee, one of the producers, one of my great friends, he called. He goes, "Okay, what do you need?" And I go, "What do I do now?" And he gave me the name of. He knew what to do then. And then my stepfather and sister were at that taping. And Kelsey called me that day, of course, when she passed away. She passed away on Friday, and we would always shoot on Tuesdays. And he goes, "You don't have to do this. We can go down for a week if you need to." And I was like, no, I need to do this. I need to be there with you guys. And so David Lee made me do that multiple members thing about 500 times. I swear we did it 100 takes of that. And the audience would just laugh, and we'd all laugh, and it was the best medicine. It truly is.
What's the best piece of advice you've gotten since you were in your career? Or who made the biggest impact on you?
I think Jeff Greenberg said to me once, he goes, "You're really strong. You don't have to play strong." I don't know why that makes me laugh, but it really, and I unfortunately told my husband that, so I hear that a lot.
Mm-hmm. You're really strong.
Like a strong character. You don't have to come in the door, like you don't have to add that in as something to play. It's already there, which I thought that was pretty good advice.
Do you think that's true?
I don't know. I think it's true in acting. I'm not sure if it's true in real life.
Do you like living out here?
Yeah, I do like living out here. I love California.
If you hadn't been an actor, what would you be doing?
Well, I grew up in Texas, and Texans have a very, very strong sense of being a Texan. At least we did. My family did. And I was very proud. I'm the kind of person who really takes that on, too. Like, I really love being a Texan. I don't always love being a Texan these days. But I do want to say that there are a lot of fabulous, wonderful Texans. And I don't think their voices are being heard right now necessarily. And I don't live there anymore. I don't live there now, so I'm not trying to take that on as we all have our things we need to decide how much of our time we're going to give, to help make it the way we think it should be. But I do love Texas, and so I feel so guilty saying how much I love California, but I do love California. And I love the U.S. I love being American, but I love to travel too.
Mm-hmm.
Why do you keep asking me that? Where do you want to be? Do you like being in Chicago?
Not this time of the year.
Yeah.
Yesterday, when I was sitting on a plane waiting for the wings to be de-iced,
yeah,
I wasn't too happy about it then. And with my Uber driver being an hour late, and I was afraid I wasn't going to make it, and
it's a lot of stress.
Whole bunch of anxiety. I tell people, when I first moved back after having lived in California for 30 years, a lot of people would say, "What are you going to do about winter?" Well, I grew up in Chicago, so, I was used to winter. I had forgotten what it was like.
Yeah.
And I remember the first few times I went out driving my car in winter and getting stuck because I didn't have snow tires and I had front wheel drive or rear wheel drive, whichever. But I would, wave money outside the window of my car to young men who were passing by to push me out of whatever snowdrift I was in. Of course, some parts of the country you could get arrested for that, but nevertheless, it seemed to work.
Oh, that's nice. That's nice to think. I can't even imagine That wouldn't work everywhere.
We'll be back for more in a moment.
Kelsey called me that day, of course, when she passed away. She passed away on Friday, and we would always shoot on Tuesdays. And he goes, "You don't have to do this. We can go down for a week if you need to." And I was like, no, I need to do this. I need to be there with you guys. I always think of that song, "The Best Is Yet to Come." I always think of that. I mean, LA is a place where you can slip so easily into ageism and feeling what is the word? Victimized by growing older. But, my mom died at 55. My dad died at 43. Wow. And my mom used to say, well, old people are the survivors. Those are the people that got to do it, so they get to do it because she was terminal for a long, long time. So I had that experience, and I think that really helped me try not to get too down. I also have 19-year-olds. I had kids later in life, so I was older than most of the moms around. Not all of them. There were a few my age, but that was really funny. Like there was this one mom who she'd say, "Well, they're off, they're in the golf cart on PCH," and I'm like, "What? What?" And then I realized she's 33 years old. She's a kid, or she doesn't know what. Can you call me for, like, oh my God, but I'm like, she's just living her life.
Yeah. Well, I go on sites now that are like dating for seniors.
Oh God, don't do that.
Too late.
Don't go on those sites.
And you look at the pictures and you think, oh my God, these are old people.
I don't want to date an old person.
Exactly. How screwed up is my thinking? Oh well. I have regrets about that too. I made some bad choices and left some people behind that I shouldn't have. In retrospect.
But you had a good reason at the time, and it'd still probably be the same reason. I don't know.
I second guess everything I do.
Yeah, I can tell.
Not good, huh?
Well, I mean, but did he really? I said this the other day. I was regretting something, and this person said to me, "Are your reasons still good?" And I go, "Absolutely." It's like, well, nothing's changed about that. No, so then I wouldn't. I only regret that it didn't go a different way. I don't regret what I did. Why am I? I'm like, I'm preaching to you.
Well, I appreciate it.
We're the children of preachers.
Yes. Yeah. And I was talking to you the other day on the phone about, I think the first time I met you was at the Cannes Film Festival when you were there to host that charity auction. And I remember you being somewhat nervous about what to do. What do I do here?
Well, I didn't know. Okay, so lovely Lily Tartikoff, who I adore, and I read an article about her when I first, not in my early years here. I remember getting the LA Times and feeling like an adult that I was reading the paper. Of course, all I ever read was calendar. and there was this big, she was married to Brandon Tartikoff, and they were the golden couple. And it was all about her years as a dancer and how what she wanted to do while she was here on this earth was work for people with breast cancer. And she was really involved. And I just remember absorbing this article and thinking, what an awesome person this is. So I say this I revere her. But I hadn't seen her for a long time. Her husband, Brandon, had died. And we all went, I'd gotten involved with the National Breast Cancer Coalition after my mother died. She died of a very rare form of sarcoma, but my friend Arlene Sorkin got me involved with the National Breast Cancer Coalition. So we were going to a luncheon where Dr. Susan Love was speaking, and I walked in with Jane Leaves and Maggie Randall, our producer, and our line producer, Maggie, and we were signing in, and I look over, and Lily's signing in, and I go, I don't think her husband had been gone a month. And I'm like, what are you doing here? She goes, I can't get enough. I'm like, oh my God. It was just so sweet that that's what she did for comfort, was to go listen to someone speak about helping people get better and how to deal with it psychologically. So she asked us all if, as a cast, we would go to Cannes and host this party for, it was for a breast cancer event. And everyone, I guess, said no. I got the last phone call and she goes, you have to, because everyone else has said no. And I'm like, but I'm getting married this summer and I'm now throwing my brother's wedding, in June, and I'm getting married at the end of July. And well, you'll just still have to go. Anyway, we get there. My husband goes, another couple went with us. Turned out to be the most, I think she gave us our room. Our room was the most beautiful room at the Hotel du Cap, which is, just a fantasy. And I think I don't know how we got that room. But anyway, my husband and Chris went to, what's the name of the fabulous, like it's where James Bond was, it's where the casino there in Cannes.
Right.
Carlton's, I think. They all went there every night and ate these hamburgers. They were called the American. They had hamburgers with French fries in them. I'll just never forget. The French fries were in the hamburger. It was genius. And he was doing well. He'd bring him a bag of money every night. And I'm like, give me that, because I don't know how much I think you have to pay cash to leave this hotel, and I don't know what they're going to, I don't know what anything costs. It doesn't say anything anywhere. I'm scared to death to ask, So we go downstairs and we've got our cash, and there'll be no charge, Miss Gilpin. And I'm like, so relieved, but also she was just so generous. Okay. But she was so generous. But every morning I had to get up and get my hair done and go do something in my makeup and all that. And you have seen for yourself what an ordeal that is. And so then, I go to this party. Okay. So the party was Calvin Klein and Isaac Marazi, am I saying his name right, had given all of this stuff to QVC to auction off about the beach, like beach towels, tanning stuff, sunglasses, bathing suits, all this stuff. And the party was going to last until all that got auctioned off. So I'm like, what? It could be hours, And I don't really know. They're all movie stars that I don't know. It's not the Emmys, it's not TV. I don't mean it that way. It's not the Television Academy. It's a group that I don't know very well. And so I start walking around. My husband's behind me at one point, and he's doing that thing where, you act like you're walking down the stairs, and then you act like you're walking, because he just because we don't know what to do anymore. And what was brilliant was it all sold out in like 45 minutes. So I didn't have to do it very long. But I had on $1 million worth of jewelry. I'd never had anything like that. And my makeup and hair and my dress, she just treated me like a princess. But so I really wanted to do a good job. But what was really cool was I was interviewing people like Jeff Goldblum, and people knew so much. And I ran into Salma Hayek, and so I'm like, will you talk to me for a minute? She went, of course I will. And I said, the National Breast Cancer Coalition shows. And she just started rattling off more information than even anyone at the organization knew. She was a complete advocate. She was really there for that reason, and she gave so much information. And it was an opportunity to talk about breast cancer with people that obviously really cared about it, but, knew a lot. And it was just, I was so nervous going in. It turned out to be a blast.
Yeah. I remember we were talking.
You could tell I didn't know how to finish that story. I could see that you could tell. I was trying to wrap it up.
No. I just, the thing that I remember so clearly is that we were talking just about what you were doing there and what you were going to be doing. And, the whole setting is so spectacular. And at one point, you remarked that there was a guy who looked like Greg Louganis. I said, it is Greg Louganis. He's here with me.
Oh!
Yes, and that was that's right. It's like, I knew that.
Oh, well, you guys,
at the
yes.
time. Yes, yeah. Oh, I see.
I forgot about that. I did forget about that.
It was just such a good time.
He said, you keep in touch, right?
Yeah.
I used to do yoga
the
classes with him
Huh?
in Malibu. I used to do yoga classes with him in Malibu.
Oh, yeah.
Do you know Scott Henderson?
No, I don't.
Scott was I think at the Olympic. He's a ice skater. And I think he was at the Olympics with him that year, whatever, and they're good friends. But I
Those Olympians hang out together.
they do. Why wouldn't you?
I don't know.
You know, I played the mom of an Olympic athlete on a show called Make It or Break It.
Uh-huh.
And it was all about elite athletes and how they basically, it was for ABC, it was for ABC Family. So it was really, it was about teenagers. But it's also, one thing that we really delved into was how those kids really don't have a childhood.
No, they don't. Greg, I remember, went to live with his coach at a very young age. But he was so gifted that it worked out well for him. 4 gold medals, 1 silver. I remember the first time I went to his house, he had a 12-foot deep swimming pool in his backyard and it had the Olympic rings on the bottom of the pool. And me, being a smartass, said, well, don't just stand there, dive something. So he went from a seated position on the platform. He went into a handstand.
Wow.
No trouble at all. And so I know that he was probably fabulous at your yoga class too, because he was the most flexible person I've ever seen. But he went into a handstand and then, did a pike and right into the pool. And it's like, oh my God, you are Greg Louganis, aren't you? Yeah.
He really did bring a lot of great, good, positive attention to that sport.
Yeah, he did. I just saw on the news last night he was honored by Orange County into some Hall of Fame they're beginning for athletes or noted Orange County residents, former residents. I was going to drop him a note.
You should.
I will. I'll send him. I have his email address. And we're Facebook friends. And we'll be right back.
I get addicted to housewives. I mean, Beverly Hills housewives. I get addicted because they get to be, many of them are friends and many of them are people I've known or been acquainted with over the years. Several are. But you just get like, you're like, I wonder what's happening over there today. Like, you really do.
How much time do you spend on social media? Do you like it?
I really I was doing a little independent movie with a bunch of friends, and I was saying, what's Twitter? What's Twitter? And they're like, come here, I'm signing you up. You're going to love it. And so I really, really got way like into the rabbit hole of Twitter. And then I got hacked at my own, I did it. Somebody called me and asked me for a code, and I gave it to them. Apple, no one will ever call you and ask you for any of this information. Do not give anybody information on the phone. But anyway, the only thing they did was hack my Twitter account. They changed the password and I couldn't get in. And I thought, okay, that's a sign. Stop it. And then also Elon Musk was taking it over, and I just have such a problem with how he's handling everything. Who doesn't? He's a madman. But anyway, so I do believe that he's right about free speech. I believe in free speech, but you have to be, you have to be ready for the consequences. And if you're inciting violence, then there should be consequences. Mm-hmm. And how can you do that? It's free speech.
Right. I'm biting my tongue.
You are?
Yes, I
Why
am.
do you? It's your show. You can say whatever you want.
Thank you. What do you watch?
I'm not telling you.
But I watched The Amazing Race. I've liked that for a long time.
Yeah, that's great. I want my daughter and husband to do that. I think they'd be actually either daughter and their dad. It would be great. Both. I think that's a great show. It is.
I enjoy it. It keeps me involved.
I get addicted to housewives. I mean, Beverly Hills housewives. I get addicted because they get to be, many of them are friends and many of them are people I've known or been acquainted with over the years. Several are. But you just get like, you're like, I wonder what's happening over there today. Like, you really do.
Doesn't it seem sometimes, though, when you're looking at social media, that a lot of the stuff that appears on it are people showing off or saying, look at me, which is, says the guy who's on television or was.
Well, what I think is, Well, I mean, of course it's fun to get into. Let's see, what is it? I guess what it is it's sort of like, it's made me listen to the news. I listen to it several times a day on NPR, like the 5-minute news, and then NPR Politics is gorgeous. It's just an amazing show. But it made me realize that it's so easy to get the wrong information if that's where you're getting it. But I think I had a sense of that, maybe because of my age or maybe because of just growing up in a different time. I always had a sense of, well, who's saying this? What's the source? But I do think social media, Twitter and Instagram, has sort of scrambled that up a little bit. So people think they don't look. My husband will show me a headline. I'll go, where's it from? You know what I mean? Because sounds like a little bit of propaganda.
Yeah.
And then the other thing, I think the social media has sort of been weaponized in a big way. And I think that recent things that have happened have shown me that. So I want to know what my friends are doing. I want to know what people I don't know that I admire are doing. I do. I'm curious and I get into it. But I think you have to, and especially with AI and all the different ways that things can be misrepresented, and you think it's somebody telling you something. There was an Avenue Q, but then there was this great video that my husband bought at an art show, and it was all about, it was kind of sending up Sesame Street. Like, if someone talks to you like this with a puppet, they can tell you just about anything, right? It's like that. You have to be careful.
I should have done the podcast like that.
Yeah.
What haven't you done that you'd like to do before the career is over or before you hang it up?
I would love, it's almost a cliche, and it's like, and my friends in the business, people that will laugh at me, but I would love to do Broadway. I would love to do a play on Broadway. Not a musical, that would not be possible, but that's not in the realm of reality. But I would love to do a play on Broadway.
Put it out there.
Yeah.
Let the universe take over, he said. Thank you, Peri. I've really enjoyed this.
Me too.
I could go longer, but I'm afraid.
What will happen?
What we'll go into. So,
yeah, we've already probably.
Well, we've talked about a lot of stuff. I lost 2 sisters at an early age. I had a sister who was out here visiting me, and I came home from work one day to find she drowned in my swimming pool.
Oh my God.
Yeah, that was a rough one. And I was saying earlier today, I just feel as though there's, the older I get, the more and more people I'm losing.
Well, I've lost all my siblings.
Have you?
My brother just passed away over the summer from a glioblastoma, and he was the 3rd.
I think I read that.
And my sister Patty died during pandemic of the same sarcoma that our mom had. And my other little sister died a few years ago, and she was 47 years old and had a heart attack. And I think there was a lot of smoking involved. So that's a really awful place to be. I'm the oldest, and to have lost all 3 of my siblings is heartbreaking.
Yeah, I had 3 sisters. My brother, and then there were 3 girls, and they all passed away. The youngest was 13. I was 10 when she died. She was profoundly, I hate to use the word retarded, but I don't know what the word to use. She had severe disabilities. And that was hard. I remember that was hard. And my other 2 sisters, the one who drowned, you know what it's like having to pick up the phone and call your parents and say,
No.
Becky's dead.
Oh my gosh.
That was hard. And she had 2 daughters, and she'd come out to visit me like she did every year. And she had an asthma attack in the pool, they determined. So
that is traumatic.
The best memory I have of her is she came out one year, and she was a big Barbra Streisand fan. And I was invited to a screening of the movie. Sweetheart's Dance was the name of the movie, and it starred Don Johnson. And at the time, Barbara was dating Don, and it was a charity benefit screening. And I asked my sister, would you like to go? Barbra Streisand's going to be there. And sure enough, after the screening, there was a little reception, and her publicist came over and said, would you like to meet Barbara? My sister was just in seventh. My nieces would say, did you have to do that? That's all she talks about, meeting Barbra Streisand. And of course, Barbara was very sweet, and it was a wonderful memory that I have.
Yeah, well, you were able to do that.
Yeah.
You know, I always think about the good stuff. Like I actually just wrote an email to a friend about, and sort of like summarized the last year or so, that all of some really insane things have happened this past year. But it's like it puts a spotlight on all the good stuff. It really does for me, because I, am a Pollyanna Baptist girl from Texas. But, I love seeing David Hyde Pierce, and here we are. It's a great, great show in New York.
I saw him in Hello, Dolly. He was wonderful.
Wasn't he great?
Yes, he was.
And I got to do a little play this past summer with right after my brother died. I went and did this reading for a friend of mine. She was stepping down after 33 years as an artistic director at a theater in New Jersey. It's called the Shakespeare Theater of New Jersey, and she was starting this classical reading program for kids, because she said after the pandemic, she goes, they're not coming back. I mean, people are terrified to go into a closed space like that.
Right.
So she felt like what she could do for her theater was really intensely do outreach towards children, to get kids back in the theater, so that they grow up and want to come. And so she did The Little Prince, and I have never understood that book. I tried to read it to my kid. It's the most read and the most sold book in the world of all time. I tried to read it to my kids, couldn't understand it. I just really didn't get it. But performing it and being directed and understanding what the other characters were doing, I finally understood. It's heartbreaking. It's actually about losing a sibling. The whole book is. But this little boy that played the Little Prince was such a fabulous young actor. He was about 8 years old, maybe 10. And it reminded me so much of my little brother, who was an actor, a child actor, and it was within 2 weeks of his death. And he left behind 2 boys in high school, which is so depressing and sad. But they were so loving to him. They were with him every second. So was his wife. They just circled the wagons. They just created a warm, loving place for him, and that's a lot. A lot of families can't or aren't able to do that. They don't get the opportunity, as you know. But having this experience was so cathartic, because I got to work with this young little boy actor, and I just kept seeing my little brother in him, and I'm like, what a gift this is, to be able to just sit off stage and think about, this is a good place for me. This business is a good place for me because it feels safe. So I think it feels safe for you too. So I think you're doing the right thing.
Thanks. Thank you. I needed to hear that. I think we're done, Jim. Jim is such a good producer.
Yeah.
Shakes his head well.
Yeah.
No, I agree. You were totally, we got this all worked out in a couple of emails and texts.
One of the, backtrack just a second.
We also need to do like a real goodbye.
Oh,
okay.
Okay.
Well, it was great talking to you.
Thank you, Peri.
Have a good
really
life.
enjoyed having you here. Thanks for saying yes. We're feeling our way through this. I've never done a podcast before, and so this is all new to me.
Well, I think it's the same thing you've always done, right?
Well, kind of.
Talking with people.
Yeah. Yep. Big names, famous people.
Yeah, big name. Big name. Eric McCormick's pretty great.
You're right up
He's
there
a
with
great
Betty
guy.
Davis and
Oh, wow.
Maureen O'Hara, some of my favorites.
Oh, my God. We used to live in when I first moved to LA, I lived in this apartment building on Miller Drive, like right above Sunset. Miller's like, if you go up La Cienega and you cross Sunset, that's Miller. And we lived in this old Spanish apartment building, like it was like Melrose Place. Melrose Place was on when we lived there, but it was also, it had been a hotel at one time, and Betty Davis had lived there, and there was, and all kinds of people had lived there.
Is it called
Villa Madrid.
Villa Madrid. I've seen pictures of it.
Yeah.
I'm sure I've driven past it too.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, anyone that came over, and it was the guy that managed the building. Other than us, you had to have some kind of a statue. So there was like Donna McKechnie and her Tony were in there, and everyone had some kind of award. I'm just trying to. Michael Jeter was there. Stockard Channing was there. Like it was as he had taken over the building. You could only get in if you were an award-winning performer, which was so funny and very LA.
Very LA.
Yeah.
So Hollywood. Well.
And they were all wonderful people.
Yeah.
And the people that already lived there were wonderful too. They enjoyed the people coming in.
Well, I think a lot of the people who come out here is because of the history, and you want to feel like you're a part of it somehow.
Another friend of mine, I told you, has a podcast called From Beneath the Hollywood Sign. And he is, it's so funny because he wrote this blog for years. He's just obsessed. When he was at University of Tennessee, Anne Rutherford came to do a play and befriended him. And she said, you should come out to LA. So he did, and they were like the best of friends. And he tells these great stories of, she'd take him through Beverly Hills, through the alleys, because that's where people throw out all their stuff, and they'd go, dumpster diving. And at one point they were picking up something out of the alley to put in her car, and they saw through the window there was an actress that used to be married to Howard Hughes, who was well known at the time. I don't know her name now, but they saw her through the window. And she was just sort of stopped in time, sort of staring. And he wrote this whole blog about it. And it was a beautiful, he loves these people. And so now he's got this great podcast called From Beneath the Hollywood Sign, and he tells these stories. And but he'll do groups, like this week he's doing female character actors, but he doesn't talk about the ones you know. He goes, I love Thelma Ritter, I love her, but we all know her. Let me tell you about this other person, and they'll get into something, and it's just like, it's so much fun. So I think there's room for anything you want to do in that world,
Roz had a little Thelma Ritter in her.
Yeah, for sure, yes.
I met Anne Rutherford once. We were doing a whole bunch of things on the 50th anniversary of Gone with the Wind in 1989. But I met her and Evelyn. I can't remember Evelyn's last name.
Well, he got to know this guy named Hal. I want to say Hal Morley. Al Morley. Al Morley was the man's name. And I don't know what he had done earlier in his life, but he would throw this dinner party. Instead of sending a Christmas card or doing anything for the holidays, he would just throw this big dinner party at the Magnolia, that piano bar. And I mean, I literally walked in there once, and Paige Buchanan, like this fabulous 90-year-old piano player, and they had a mirror on the keyboard, and then he was downing champagne. They were like, Paige, stop it. They were trying to get him to stop drinking. And Marsha Hunt, do you know who Marsha Hunt?
Yeah.
She was a great friend of Al's and of Steve Kmetko's. And one night we all went somewhere together, and I said, she lived really close to me, and I said, I'm going to bring my twins over to see you someday. And she goes, call first. She didn't want to meet my twin babies. She actually just passed away at like 104 years old. But she was blacklisted, and then she went with that whole gang to Washington D.C. Humphrey Bogart and all of them, and then they all kind of got turned when they got there, and she was the one that didn't turn, and she was just completely blacklisted. But I was there at I think they held it at the DGA because it was the biggest place, but SAG, the DGA, the WGA, Equity, all the unions apologized to the few that were left. Do you remember that? It was like 20 years ago. And one of them died on the way to the luncheon in a car accident. One of the writers.
Bad timing.
He wrote Spartacus. It was
not Dalton Trumbo.
Yeah, well, it was the other one. Dalton Trumbull was there, and then it was the other one. So maybe but it was so he was on stage thanking everybody, we got to hear him give us, thank you for thanking us and thank you for this. And then the next day he was driving to a luncheon and died in a car accident on the way to the luncheon. Isn't that crazy?
Yeah. Did you know Ronnie Chasen at all?
Mm-mm.
She was a publicist out here, big name publicist, for a long time. She was going home from a party for burlesque, and she was shot and killed in her Mercedes Benz in Beverly Hills on her way home.
What? Did they ever?
Yeah, it was. Well, I don't know. The guy offed himself eventually, but he was in a flea bag hotel downtown, and lots of people said not very kind things about him, but it was just such a shock.
I do remember waking up that morning to that.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much. I'm
You're
so glad you did this.
welcome. Me too.
Still Here Hollywood is a production of the Still Here Network. All things technical run by Justin Zangerle. Theme music by Brian Sadashin. And executive producer is Jim Lichtenstein.